This is a really, it's an interesting topic to have as a debate, but what's also interesting is hearing from, online people who said, haven't we already been talking about this? Hasn't this conversation been going on since the 60s? Maybe it has been, but I think we actually are in a really interesting landscape right now, which is very different than any other time sort of in advertising and communications history. So we have this question, is research castrating great work? I love this title. You know, the word castrate makes me cringe and walk a little funny. But I think it's asking the wrong question. I would change this question subtly and ask the question I think most creative people would want answered, which is pre-testing castrating great work? And I think there's a big difference between that. There's a big difference between pre-testing and research. And from the creative view, when you hear research, you kind of go, oh my God, they're going to test our ads. They're different things. So I've looked at the question from this perspective. And you know, the real question that comes from this is, how do we determine what work goes forward to the consumer? And the answer to that is, it depends. Because there are two basic ways that pre-testing creative is used. The first one can be really, really useful. And that is, are you getting insight? If you're exposing an idea to consumers to see if there's some way to amplify it or optimize it, that is a really, really good thing. And I think seasoned creative folks will go, I'm interested in that. I'm interested in finding out if there are things that we can learn from our finished creative or our close to finished creative just to amplify it and take it up to that next level. I've had work, lots of it, that has gotten better because of research used this way. And you know, learning it and sharing with the consumers can give you insights that you wouldn't get otherwise. So the big question is, are you using pre-testing to gain insight? Or are you using research to pick or to establish a yes or no to go forward? And if you're doing that, then I would say absolutely, good ideas are dying in research. But there's another really bad outcome from doing this, which is that this is a great way to make creative people hate research. And I think that is a terrible, terrible shame. Creative people should be embracing research, should be embracing learning, should be embracing finding out what the consumer really feels about their briefs, really feels about the products, really feels about what's going forward. But pre-testing to choose work or to hit a score so that work will actually get produced is a surefire way to disengage people, particularly creative people, and make them hate that process. And I don't think anybody wants that. So there are a lot of reasons for this, and I can't possibly go through all those reasons in the 15 minutes that I have. But I really believe that when this kind of concept testing is on the table, the mindset of the client, of the planning department, and even of the creative people change towards the project. I've seen it happen. Suddenly, the only way you're going to get something on the air is if you hit a number. So you start thinking about getting that score of 120 or higher, or whatever the metric is. And you start thinking about that as part of your creative goal. And that is wrong. Because you start to bend the work that way. Even if you don't think you're doing it, subconsciously I think it starts to happen. Even further than that, I would argue that when research focus groups are allowed to become the gatekeeper of what will be produced, and then consciously or subconsciously, it actually affects the way the teams produce the work in the first place. And it doesn't affect it in a good way. So yes, sorry about that, a little loud there. Let's use research to gain insight on the work, but we simply can't rely on pre-testing to make our decisions for us. Here's what else we can't rely on it for. Don't rely on it to truly, truly, truly measure breakthrough. It can sort of do that, but there are so many things that research in this way just can't tell us about creative ideas. I don't expect it to tell me how many laughs it will get. I don't expect me to tell me how many tears an ad will shed or how many hairs I can get to stand up on the back of someone's neck, because those are things that great advertising does. They're not things that great research materials do. I don't rely on it to tell me how a consumer will really react and respond, because in my view, those feelings don't happen on the other side of the focus group glass. They only happen in the moment in places that we can't possibly be. I was in a research presentation some years ago, hearing feedback on an ad. And the particular spot that we were looking at had the chance to be emotional, and it had a chance to be moving, and you know, it had a chance to be something really special. Obviously, this was a really, really hard thing to build into the research materials. So I asked the person from the research house about how we would account for the emotional pull that we would get through casting and through performance and through direction and through cinematography and through all those sort of nuanced things that we know we'd be able to bring to the creative. And the answer that I got was this: Oh, don't worry. We've modeled the emotion in. And that is fucking terrifying. I want to show you a spot now. I'm going to show you a couple of spots, and they're not spots that were done by our agency, but they're great examples of sort of what you cannot find when you're researching these kinds of materials. So this first spot's from Great Britain. It's for a fruit drink. And as you watch this, and I'm going to play it twice because there's a thing in this spot that rewards repeated viewing. As you watch this, I want you to try and imagine what the storyboard frames would be. So think of these as rendered and drawn, even if they're beautiful, and like people moving like this and things. Try and imagine it that way and how folks would react in a research group.
Get better. How are we going to get it? Oh. Isn't that Judy from your school? Yeah. I think she likes you. No, she doesn't. She does. Go talk to her. Such an embarrassment. I am your father. Night, Dad.
Night, pal.
In the interest of time, actually, I won't play it a second time. But if you, because I know that I'm under the gun and I'm verbose, and I go on and on. But in that spot, there are subtle things. There's, you know, the shadow of the boys is different. When they throw a stone, the lengths of the stones that they throw are different. The older boy who represents the dad, he's wearing a dad's watch. Like there's these moments, and you know, when this spot broke, we heard about it over here because, hey, it's just a beautiful spot. But the thing that it did was people went back and investigated all those wonderful things that were in the ad. Those things just cannot ever show up in a group. And you could board all that stuff out and you could explain it in detail, but so much of the power from that it just wouldn't have come from anything other than a finished, beautiful piece of film. I'll give props. That's Bartle, Bogle, and Haggerty out of London, who are, you know, do great stuff. So as I said, the things that make that ad powerful can't possibly show up in a top box score. The nuance, the charm, the deft editorial technique, all that. Great advertising relies on things that don't find themselves within the rules. Rules like establish the branding up front and you'll boost your score. I think I've heard that in practically every top-line meeting I've ever been in. And it may be true. I mean, and it's interesting, I had a conversation with my president, Stuart Payne, and we were talking about this, and he said, you know, that's true for really good advertising. There's a lot of not-so-great advertising that needs all the help it can get. But when you're talking about great creative, which is what this is about, you know, some of these rules don't apply. So I'm going to show you an old chestnut, which proves this really, really well.
Hey, that's great. But who are the chefs?
Not going anywhere for a while?
Great googly moogly.
Grab a Snickers.
You spell it.
Yeah.
I mean, the engagement, the joy, I mean, it's one of my favorite spots of all time. But and there's a million examples that I could give where the story is so wonderful, it's so great, that you hang on to find out who just brought you that. And when the impact of the branding comes, and it's nice too, they've integrated the product into the drama, so it's all that sort of stuff. You wouldn't want to change that. And I don't know if that ever saw a focus group, but I kind of think that it probably didn't, because I just think it didn't. One thing that's interesting is the examples that I've both used have been TV ads, and there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that's because TV is the only thing we pre-test. This is my 23rd year in this business, and in all that time, I've never researched a print campaign. I've never researched an outdoor campaign. I've never researched a radio campaign. And I've never researched a digital campaign. Only TV. And that makes total sense, because that's where all the money is spent. It's where the most financial risk is taken. That's where necks get stuck out. Or maybe we should say that's where all the money used to be spent. Because I really believe that a lot of the best creative that's coming out of this country now isn't on TV. And that's going to continue. It will become less and less and less so over time. TV is not dead, not even close. But there are a lot of other fantastic mediums that marketers are turning to. So the way that we're communicating is changing. It's changing faster and faster with each passing quarter. And I don't think the traditional research can possibly keep up. We often talk about in the agency, how can we keep up? Because there's a new thing, it seems, every year. The same thing is happening with market research. Great advertising is going to be increasingly experiential. It's going to be in events. It's going to be in online film and other forms of digital content. And it's going to be in social. And all of those things are really, really hard to measure. Here's an example of an interesting social campaign that we did last year at Saatchi. And the point is, if this was a client who had the money to research, I have no idea how they would have done it. So let's look at this.
Well, the fucking nigger bitch.
Fucking bitch asshole!
Society doesn't know enough about it to understand.
Stop spitting, bitch.
Nina. Nina, Nina, Nina.
I apologize if some of the folks in the back of the room couldn't see the supers because I know they're sort of thin. But that was a classic example of a big ballsy idea that we would have no idea of how we would have researched that. There's no research methodology in the world that would be able to emulate what people's real-world response in real time to a media event like this would be. But the cool thing was when we launched this and we watched it unfold, we were able to adjust things en route. As a result, it became a pretty good success for this client. It taught us as it went. It researched itself. And that was pretty cool. And that's what got, I think, a lot of us excited because we got learning as it went through. The best part about these kinds of mediums is that because we can see consumers react to work in real time, the research is built right in. If a social idea blows up and proliferates wildly, that's a job well done and everybody should be happy. But if it doesn't, if we can see the voice of the consumer either not responding or responding negatively, then we have a wide range of analytical tools to understand what the problem is. And then we can tack and make adjustments to the campaign as we go. You can't do that with traditional mediums like TV, for example. You can't find out if a TV spot isn't working mid-campaign, re-edit it and put it back up, re-edit it and put it back up, re-edit it and put it back up. It's too expensive, it's too clumsy. You have to launch it and hope. And is this to say that TV is going away? Absolutely not. But it will become less and less critical as other mediums rise in importance. So here's the next million-dollar question. Where will all those research dollars go? They should go where they should have been all along, in my view, at the beginning of the process and not at the end. Let's shift all that money towards better product testing so our client partners can bring a way better offering to the market. Let's shift it to finding out who our customers really are and what they really want, and to learn to get better insights into what motivate them. Let's use these dollars to put more planners onto the problem earlier so that they can sift the information for better insights, so we can get better briefs. It means we'll get the voice of the consumer guiding us at the beginning of the journey and not judging us at the end. It means we'll have to trust our guts more, and that's a good thing. It means we won't be able to launch and forget. It means we won't be able to shrug and point back to the research score as protection if a campaign doesn't actually perform in the marketplace. So, to close, let's go back to the question from the beginning. Is pre-testing castrating great work? Sure, when it's used the wrong way. But as time goes on, and as we embrace mediums that are resistant to traditional research methods, I think this is what's going to happen. I think great traditional and non-traditional work is going to start castrating pre-testing, which is a weird sentence to say castrating pre-testing. The other thing is I think that research as we know it is going to have to change. It is changing now. And I think all of us can agree that that's a pretty good thing. Thank you.